Hey, high school literacy leaders, welcome back to Curriculum Chats. This is DLC Foster Yankee, and in this video, I'll be discussing Lesson 5 in Section 1 of the Warmth of Other Suns unit. The goals for this lesson have students making inferences and using evidence to support understanding of the first half of Part 2 of the Warmth of Other Suns, discussing and writing about the explicit and implicit meanings of the first half of Part 2 of the book, and analyzing characteristics and structural elements of the first half of Part 2 of the book, such as the relationship between organizational design and Wilkerson's purpose. Same text, a lot of materials. Students will be using the Forming Evidence-Based Claims tool, Mentor Sentence Journal, Warmth of Other Suns Jigsaw Note-Taking tool, Mentor Sentence Handout 1, Structure Note-Taking tool, the vocabulary list, vocabulary and context tool, vocabulary journal, working with mentor sentences tool, and several reference guides, including academic discussion, annotating and note taking, assessing sources, avoiding plagiarism, claims, organization, questioning, and style reference guides. So we do have 7 activities, 2 of which are optional. In this lesson, students are sharing and discussing what they've learned about the 3 focus figures in the Warmth of Other Suns, focusing on the details of their experiences and the push and pull factors driving them to consider leaving the South. They will also read and discuss additional sections of Part 2 to add to their understanding of how Wilkerson uses structure to share this period in our history. This lesson begins with students following their teacher's directions about how to move from their expert groups into their home groups. Experts A, B, and C share their learning about their assigned person, Ida, George, and Robert, with their home groups, using the guiding questions on the screen on the Jigsaw note-taking tool to structure the sharing. As they share, students should remember that they might not have content to share for all of the guiding questions during every Jigsaw discussion. As the other experts share, students take notes on their Jigsaw note-taking tool and ask questions to help support their understanding of each assigned person. After all experts have taught their home groups about their assigned focus figure, students discuss the question on the screen. Per the teaching notes, teachers should be sure to foster an open and respectful classroom culture so that all students feel comfortable expressing their opinions, and check on students individually for understanding and participation during the discussions. They might encourage students to practice using literary terms, academic language, and the vocabulary they have been exposed to in this unit or in prior units. Using the language of the discipline and topic is a powerful and empowering practice for all students. But English learners in particular benefit from repeated exposures to new vocabulary. Because this is the first time students are sharing with their home groups, things may take a little longer than they will subsequently. Students might use a group constructed Google document to record their discussions. As students work, teachers can check on students individually to provide support, ensure students are mindful of the time, and encourage them to add outstanding questions that might help to drive further exploration of the 3 focus figures in the next jigsaw to their Jigsaw note taking tool. If students need support with engaging in an academic discussion, this will be a great opportunity to incorporate the academic discussion reference guide. Next, students use a Forming Evidence-Based Claims tool and continue working in their home groups to share and compare their annotation from pages 36 to 46 and 89 to 94 regarding the push and pull factors for each focus figure. Students work with their group to describe the 2 most significant influences on each focus figure's decision to migrate. As a group, they use 3 separate copies of the Forming Evidence-Based Claims tool to respond to each of the questions on the screen, selecting key details that are most important for answering each. Students also analyze the details by explaining how they connect to the guiding question, explain the connections between the details they selected, and finally, form a claim by stating a conclusion they have drawn based on their analysis of the details. Further teaching notes, teachers might remind students that a claim is an evidence based opinion or conclusion about a text or topic. At this point in the process, students can make an informal statement in preparation for expressing their understanding in writing. This is the first time that students use a forming evidence based claims tool in this unit, so teachers might identify and cite a few key details from the text, then model the tool's scaffolded process. If this is the first time forming evidence based claims tool is being used, teachers might consider modeling its use for one of the focus figures, either Ida, George, or Robert, before turning the task over to the groups. They might display a forming evidence based claims tool and use it to model how to form an evidence based claim about the two most significant factors influencing Ida's decision to leave the South. Okay, and yeah, I think that's all the notes for activity two, this step of activity two. Moving on. If students are struggling to identify and analyze textual details related to the question, the teacher might help them complete the cells in the first three rows of the tool. Then they can prompt students to explain the connections they see and then form a resulting claim about the focus figure. If students need additional support to write their three claims, teachers should consider providing them with various sentence frames from which to choose, as in the following examples seen on the screen. Teachers might also, again, want to remind students that a claim is an evidence based opinion or conclusion about a text or topic. At this point in the process, students' statements can be informal as they are just beginning to develop these ideas. For this next optional activity, students will use their vocabulary journal and vocabulary list, which they will maintain for the entire unit. They might use a vocabulary and context tool for words they can decipher from the text. For others, they might use morphology to decipher the meaning, or a reference resource to check if their meaning is accurate. For some words, the teacher might present them with definitions. Working as a whole class, students review the vocabulary list for part two of the text. Students locate the words as they are used in the text, referencing the provided page number, and consider the questions on the screen for each term, then write down each key word with their notes about its meaning and importance in their vocabulary journal. Further teaching notes, the approach to vocabulary instruction presented in this activity focuses on reviewing and cementing key concepts and words that students have encountered within the text that they have read and studied in this lesson. Used in this way, then, it is an after reading activity. Alternatively, teachers could modify this activity slightly and use it either as a before reading preview or as support during reading. The vocabulary list is organized to present keywords and challenging vocabulary from the text, with page references to indicate the context in which the author uses the word. Thus, each vocabulary word also presents an opportunity for close reading of something the author has said, offering the opportunity for students to find context clues and for teachers to emphasize important or interesting ideas. When having students define words using contextual clues, teachers should keep in mind that the complexity of the context clues might vary greatly depending on the student's linguistic and cultural background. These differences are grounded in students' understanding not only of language but of content as well. For example, native English speakers might grasp nuances and contextual clues, such as tone or cultural references, while English learners might not understand, making it all the more difficult for them to define the targeted vocabulary word. Teachers might have students draw a picture next to applicable vocabulary and definitions. Mental images and associations can help strengthen students' understanding of newly acquired vocabulary. The picture does not necessarily need to be a precise depiction. Rather, the mental image should serve as an association between the meaning of the word and students' personal knowledge. Additionally, if a word understudy is a cognate, a word that shares similar spelling, meaning, and pronunciation with a word in another language, in the student's home language, the teacher might make connections between the cognate and the new vocabulary word. A cognate provides a bridge to the English language for English learners. Another strategy might be to consider splitting up the vocabulary words among groups of students, as well as organizing students into different groupings, small groups, pairs, or individuals, to create more challenge and provide different opportunities for students to apply and demonstrate learning. A lot of notes. All right, moving on to activity 4, which also is optional. As students continue to read the text in this unit, they use their mentor sentence journal to identify sentences that stand out to them as interesting or that represent a strong example of a particular concept they have learned. They can use these sentences to build a writer's toolbox, wherein they have a number of techniques at their disposal to use when writing. Students work through the following steps for each mentor sentence in Mentor Sentence Handout 1, following their teacher's directions regarding grouping, materials, and which mentor sentences they will analyze. Further teaching notes. Rather than completing isolated language exercises, students can effectively learn style and conventions by focusing on the writing they are studying. The complex texts used in core instruction provide a rich resource of mentor sentences for students to analyze, and the shortened written responses, section diagnostics, and culminating tasks provide students the opportunity to apply their new learning in an authentic writing context. Asking students to analyze the structure of a mentor sentence allows them to understand how the parts and structure of the sentence affect their understanding of the text and the writer's craft. Not all sentences merit a close examination. If the primary goal is understanding of text, sentences that students examine should contain important information or ideas from a text or the essential questions for a unit. The sentence is likely one that has multiple layers of meaning as it will be read multiple times. If the primary goal is understanding the writer's craft, sentences should contain words and phrases that relate to the grammatical concepts being explored. The purpose of the Mentor Sentence Journal is to encourage students to read like writers and to build a writer's toolbox of writing strategies to use in their own writing. By using the journal, students will have a consistent place to collect their to use writing strategies, which can be referenced when writing their responses to the section diagnostics and the culminating task. All mentor sentences used in this lesson come from The Warmth of Other Suns. Sample chunking and deconstruction notes for sentence 1 to use during the Think Aloud model, as well as possible grammatical concepts for the included sentences in this lesson, can be found in the teaching notes. So again, note, grammar is a huge concern with this curriculum. There's been talk about how it's not addressed. This activity will be a great opportunity to take advantage and teach some grammar. Moving on to activity 5, students review the thread label directions and the completed thread label column for part 1 on the structure note-taking tool using the questions on the screen. Then they work with their group to deepen understanding by tracking and evaluating the effects of details in each of the sections used by Wilkerson in the first half of part 2, using their quick writes from the end of the previous lesson, as well as their jigsaw note-taking tool notes to help them respond to the guiding questions on the tool. They'll also work to label the thread for each and might have to create some new labels if none of the previous ones fit. For the teaching notes, students may need more support in understanding the concept of threads as they refer to the categories of content used by Wilkerson. 3 types of threads are referenced in the structure note-taking tool, which account for these categories, and those are seen there at the bottom of the screen. To help students respond to the guiding questions, teachers can remind them to review their quick writes from the end of the previous lesson, as well as their jigsaw note-taking tool notes. They can also check on students individually to ensure that they understand the tool and its use and to provide support and challenge. Next, students review and sort the list of words or phrases that they generated at the end of lesson 2 to describe Wilkerson's structure and respond to the questions on the screen as a group. This lesson concludes with students continuing to complete the structure note-taking tool for the first half of part 2 of the text and writing new or interesting words they encounter in their vocabulary journal. That brings us to our cub for this lesson. Again, I'm struggling to write cubs for The Warmth of Other Suns. There seems like there's a lot going on, but also with the same thing going on every lesson. So this is what I came up with for lesson 5. Again, would love any feedback anyone would provide. I have students will know the two most significant factors influencing their figure's decision to leave the South. They'll understand how Wilkerson uses structure to share this period in our history and be able to analyze characteristics and structural elements of the first half of part two of the book, such as the relationship between organizational design and Wilkerson's purpose using a structured note taking tool to write notes. And then, disclaimer, I also, as I was trying to develop a CUB, thought the forming evidence based claims tool or the claim written by students in Activity 2 would also be a suitable formative assessment for this lesson. And that's really where I got my case from. So, not even sure that this aligns. I know my understanding might be able to align, but I did struggle with the no that would align with those two. So, as always, that's a wrap for this video. Again, I do welcome your feedback and look forward to hearing from you either on Twitter, via email, or in the comments. While you're here, don't forget to subscribe so you never have to worry about missing a video. Thanks for watching.